Hey, are you going to play the music? This is the Caffeinated Risk Summer Show with your hosts, Tim McCreet and Doug Leese.
All right, we're here. It's almost the end of summer, so we better get our summer show in. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it just seems like things are moving faster and not quite keeping up. And I think we just have this, virtual pace, and we're trying to squish it back into a physical world.
I agree. I mean, it's been tough. I mean, this has been a busy year, and yeah, I'm struggling to get caught up on a lot of different things. So it's nice to take some time and to sit back and go through this. But
you're literally flying back. Like you just flew in again last night, right?
Yeah, I just got back from Saskatoon. I keynote and opened BSides Saskatoon, and I ran a half-day seminar on storytelling techniques on Thursday and Friday. So yeah, this has been a busy week. Yeah, it's nice to get home though. But I got home late last night and up early this morning. So.
Yeah, talking to me. How about
That's
that?
That's good, though. This is good.
I feel honored.
This is good.
There we are.
This is a good way to spend the morning. I'm good with this. So this is good.
BSides out here in Western Canada has really taken on its own sort of special flavor, and each group is doing this. And I was real proud when I saw Cliff saying, "Hey, we're going to do our first one," and the guys from different guys from Calgary have been out there doing stuff. Like Mark was out there, you've been there, and I get to go to Edmonton next month to do BSides there, and that's kind of the first time I've ever been there, and I feel bad, but it's never worked out timing wise. And again, blaming the pandemic. We originally were going to do a spring and a fall thing, and
right.
We've had real good synergy between the two cities for a long time. We could never quite make it like an Alberta thing. And it's good that they kind of went their own separate ways. Each of these cities have been building over the years. And, it was actually the Vancouver guys that kind of helped us out for the first one.
Really?
And And Charles Harden from... And another Securus guy.
From Securus.
He's over he's at Mandiant, and they're now Google. Mm-hmm. And he was out to Calgary this year. And so, Western Canada's got this really good collaborative ecosystem. And the winners are the people that get to go to the conferences, because of course we've got the big one with DEF CON and BSides Las Vegas and Black Hat, and they call it a cyber summer camp. But not only is it in the United States, which is a little uncomfortable for some of us right now, but it's also traveling there, the cost. I mean, it's great that we've got hands-on in-person training across and available for folks in Western Canada now. And, I was talking with some guys I work with in Edmonton and said, I couldn't make it down to Calgary, but I'm definitely going to make it to Edmonton because they are in Edmonton now. And so I think it's good. I think...
you know what? And it's interesting because I've had the privilege of going to almost all of the BSides conferences here in Canada, which has just been fantastic these last few years. I was up in Edmonton when they rebooted and started over again. I think it was 17, 18. I had a chance to go up, and Calgary was the same. Vancouver, Victoria. Now having, it was an honor to head out to Saskatoon. This was their second year. Yeah. It was a 30% growth for those who are registered. They were running a capture the flag contest. Your name was used in reverence because they kept trying to figure out how can we ever get as good as Doug's CTF in Calgary, and I thought that was super cool to hear. That was really cool. Dallas Bobick was there, and he was helping run the CTF part of it. And the team, the actual team from the BSides group, they did such a great job. Everything was so well done. The focus was on the learning and the experience and the networking. It was great to see students come to the session as well, which was super cool. That's always great to see. And had a chance to do training the day before the conference with storytelling, and then helping open, the conference the morning of. That was awesome. Yeah, it was a great experience. I was really happy to be part of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up CTFs. I mean, there's so little of that now. You know, there's commercial platforms like Hack the Box and stuff, and the challenge with any sort of a lab environment is trying to make it real but safe, and make it hard to defeat but defeatable. And yet when it fails, it doesn't ruin it for everybody else and all the rest of it. Yeah. It's an interesting development challenge that, yeah, trust me, the minute we finish the last one, my gears are already going on what we're going to do for the next.
You spent months on that, though. I mean, the one in Calgary, you were spending months on that. I remember you talking about it.
Each year.
Yeah, each year.
No, each year. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we're doing that a lot. And people, you know, especially the fair one, she's like, why do you do this? And, you know, similar to Michael Spaulding, I don't know. It's like some sort of illness. But I think giving people the chance to try some of the stuff they read about in a realistic enough world. I was just reading or listening, I guess, technically, to a book. And they're talking about how the evolution of all of these virtual things is removing the mentorship and the hands-on learning that is essential for a human to figure it out. Yeah. And I mean, nobody in Silicon Valley or any corporate boardroom wants to hear that, you know, digitization is all great and it goes super fast, but you've got this little, you know, human meatbag evolutionary problem that tends to evolve over, you know, centuries and millennia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're wondering why they haven't incorporated last quarter's advances in agentic AI into their business process yet. And
it's just, I agree. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that, because just watching, like, over the last few years, how people get so excited to come to the workshops where you got to do hands-on, like whether it's capture the flag or when you actually have to participate in a room for a topic, like, you know, the storytelling workshop I ran in Saskatoon, and I want to do in others. You actually have to come, you have to sit down, you got to be part of it, you got to be engaged, you get to stand up partway through, you get to talk about your story and risk, and, you know, couple that with I actually have to capture a flag. I actually have to have some technical skill set. But you could see groups of people were collecting around inside the theater going, oh, what are you doing? Yeah. How are you doing this? Or what did you try? And you could see them running back and forth to the team, running BSides in Saskatoon. And like, am I close? Am I getting there? And it was cool to see, one, the enthusiasm for the folks who were doing this, but two, it's the interaction. And you're right, Doug, we kind of miss that. If I'm relying on the machine to do all the work, I'm just all I am is I'm just a passive learner. We need to get active in the learning. And I think that's when the skills change, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Active learning. Yeah. What are you doing to activate the learner? Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Hey, that could be one of your talking points.
I'm gonna borrow that, guys.
Yeah, no, do. We were talking about cloud, me and a couple of fellows I work with the other day, and the new kids coming in, and they've never even built a computer.
Yeah.
From the motherboard up, right? Like, did you literally open the box and take the server out and rack it up and, you know, install the RAM and the hard drives and all the rest, and then argue with the network team for a week about cabling and somebody else about power and, you know, getting a server in a rack used to be an adventure. That'd be like a week-long job at, you know, Bell and Shaw and all that kind of stuff when I was doing that. And now, you know, I log into GCP or I log into Azure or DigitalOcean because I'm cheap and that's where I buy my stuff. You know, make me a computer this big by this wide, click, load this operating system, and, you know, literally 3 minutes later, it's on the internet.
Yeah.
And if you're smart and you build these templates, and a lot of the CTF stuff I've been building using Ansible or other kinds of scripts and stuff, because you got to build 12 of something.
Yep.
You want to automate that. And there's no way I ever want to go back to doing it all by hand. But because I know how to do it all by hand, using these tools makes it easy. But I think when you get people that haven't ever done it for real, it makes it incredibly abstract and difficult. And I think that's why we're still seeing cyber breaches in the cloud and people saying the cloud is insecure and all this stuff. And it's like, no, you just hooked it up wrong. And it's not your fault you didn't know better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I watched this. It was just a fascinating session. One of the presenters was talking about physically getting into a laptop if you acquired, like if you actually physically had a laptop, and how would you get in without credentials? And he went through everything from popping off the back and pulling out boards to replacing and bringing in his own kit, going through all of the electronic countermeasures that we have today. We didn't have that years ago, but we have it today, right? And how you can defeat it and still get in and still get access and, still get access to the hard drive. And then I kept thinking back, does everyone remember what it was like to actually solder a chip on a board? Or have to figure out an and, or, and nor gate in the equation when you were doing your circuit panel, like when you were doing your circuit routes on because I remember doing that, and that was my evening classes when I was going to NATE up in Edmonton. I wanted to learn, and here I am taking circuit boards, and I'm like, Jesus, it was cool to see somebody getting to that level to physically break in and compromise a machine. But some of the folks in the crowd, I mean, as I'm nodding my head with all the other gray-haired folks, we're like, this is awesome. And the other folks, they're just rapidly taking notes on their notepad or on their laptop, because this is new for them. They've never seen the inside, or they've never seen the guts of a laptop and how it works. And we're like, this is awesome, right? And it was really cool to see someone relatively young share their experience on how they compromise machines physically doing those types of approaches. But it is old school approach. It is understanding how to circumvent a chip. It's how do I get past an EEPROM? How do I clear that? How do I dump that with 64 zeros to clear it and get it so that I can register something? I was impressed with the approach that he took, but it caught some of the younger folks in the audience off guard, because this is, to your point, Doug, I'm just used to going to the cloud getting stuff. You mean I got to pop open the back of a laptop and figure out how to break into it? That was a cool session to watch, actually, just the interaction with the crowd when he was going through it.
Yeah. At the Calgary BSides this year, we had our first foray into physical badges. We turned that into a functional thing. And one of the CTF flags was Brigade had sponsored as part of the badge thing. You got a resistor and an LED and some instructions on how to hack your badge.
Oh, yeah.
And a surprising number of people actually engaged with the badge in that way. And one of the flags was, you need to make the extra LED blink, right? Like somehow you got to hook it up to your badge and make it blink. And we had set up a couple solder stations there, and we convinced the school to turn off this.
Look the other way.
No, there's a lot of logistical things to get the fire suppression systems dialed back or whatever. And they let us do it, which was cool. And so, we had people there that had no idea how to solder anything. And you're quite right. It was the older folks that were teaching new people how to do it. But the absolute look of joy on some people's faces when they soldered a wire to an LED, and in some cases they got a resistor in path because they heard, well, and it work without it.
Sure.
You'll burn things out and go through the battery faster, or you can make it go a little longer with the resistor in. So you got a chance to explain a little bit about how electronics works, and we had a couple of talks on that. One of them was mine. Not saying go watch it, but it's like, this is an area that's not normally covered, right? Is how to do things physically. Like, there's a computer instruction, and then how does it turn into something in the real world?
Yeah.
Now, I've been working in OT, or OT adjacent, however you want to say it. Like, I don't go into the field, but I help work on the systems or guard the systems that do that stuff. And, it's like, how does that program turn into moving something? Like whether it's cookies down the line or a plane off the runway, it's all computers behind it. It's like, that should scare the heck out of you. But for those that choose to believe in magic, AI is awesome. You're kind of like, how do you do this? But just many of them had never even done it before. But what floored me is when you're doing these puzzles up and everything, you got an idea in your mind of how somebody would do this. There were a bunch of alternative ways that people came up and, well, is it blinking now? It's like, it sure is, and I never would have done it that way, but that totally works. Here's your code. Off you go, get your points.
That's awesome.
Right? And so I think just the number of different examples here, there's still a hunger in humans to be involved with what's going on, and we don't just want to be passive participants in it. So I'm thinking that at some point, higher up in the boardrooms are going to say, we don't care who's happy or not, we just want to be rich. And that's fair if you own the company. But I think if we go too far, they're not going to have any customers. And having, long before I got into cybersecurity, I also worked in the real world and sold stuff and had companies and staff. And you learn very quickly when you're out in the real world that if there's nobody making the cash register ring, your business doesn't stay around very long. It's a really bizarre concept, but it's universal. It transcends geography, language, and time. If the cash register is not ringing, you are not in business. And I think there's a risk management strategy I've heard of that looks at ways that little process stops, and it's your job to prevent that from happening. I think is that roughly?
Yeah. I'm like kind of building a whole company on that. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's funny you mentioned that because I used my presentation at BSides this year was about what we went through with our dog after Hazel hurt her back and we had to go through the surgery. And I talked about it as this journey to resilience that every organization should look at and what's your Hazel moment, because there's a point where it took 3 seconds for our dog's back to be injured, like running down the stairs and trying to find the squirrel in the backyard. And I showed the video from our camera, right, that this is what happened. And all I asked at the end was, what does your company do in those 3 seconds and to recover after? Because that's all it takes to click a link or open a file or a misconfigured port or a vuln that hasn't been patched. And all of a sudden, that 3 seconds is enough time to do a lot of things. And what's the company's response? Because, to your point, if the cash register can't open, if the doors can't open, if I don't have product, if I can't get stuff to my customers, all of a sudden that door stays closed. And what's your company doing to make sure the door stays open? Not just after, but the year or so after, the 2 years or so after. What does bouncing back better look like for an organization?
I think that's what's been missed in a lot of the cybersecurity stuff. And I'm glad to see that multiple conferences are talking about bigger things than the next 0 day and the cool exploit and all the rest. The whole goal of cybersecurity is still protecting the business.
Yes.
I think that's what's been lost on so many of these classes and training and everything else. And there's a number of problems with the technology that's out there, but how many of them are actually being used to disrupt organizations for some kind of value back, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, the number one thing going on right now against businesses is stealing from them through business email compromise and extorting them through ransomware.
Yep.
And that hasn't changed in 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
It's like the same thing. So even though people are finding all these other wicked exploits and all these other problems, so like, unless you can actually turn it into money, it's probably not an issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it was Mike Legary that really cemented that in my head, that, you know, you always got to find the path to the monetization, or it's probably not a threat you want to prioritize.
Exactly. And I think that's the one thing we're all starting to recognize now, and we're seeing it, right? We're starting to see this kind of...
Finally.
Yeah, finally.
I mean, he told me this in 2012.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken a little bit to get back to it, but we're starting to see where the focus needs to be, at least from our side as professionals. We need to look at how are they monetizing it? What's the value to the attacker to do this? And other than nation states, which that's a different ballgame altogether, but from a pure criminal activity, if you're being targeted, there's a purpose behind it. There's revenue to be generated, because on the other side of the web, and I have had an amazing introduction to that in this last little while, that they have business goals and objectives just like we do, and they need to monetize as quickly as they can. So their focus is, don't get me wrong, some of the zero-day research and all that, super cool. Vast majority of stuff that's targeting companies right now is just that. I'm going to sell your business email. I'm going to get in there with my ransomware, and you're going to pay to get your data back. And then I'm going to move on to the next client, and the next one, and the next one. To them, this is a business model that is profitable, and it works because we will always click on links, and we will always not be prepared to try to recover our files.
Well, and even when it's not a link, like you look at the business email compromise model, that, you know, the attacker gets inside the organization, learns a little bit about it, and sends a compelling enough email, you know, something better than, hi, I'm the president and I need you to send me 50 Apple gift cards.
Yeah.
You know, that's not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
But hey, I work for you as a contractor or whatever, and I need you to change my banking information to this.
Yeah.
You know, and I was recently working on Project X, and, you know, it is your project number and everything. Well, of course it is, because he's in the email reading it.
Yeah.
So, you know, if it's a credible enough pretext, there you go. And I think that's where I'm really struggling, as much as I'm a fan of technology. You know, when I look at some of these things like AI is going to take over and everything, like, the people that don't use these technologies will make those statements. You know, one more BSides reference. There was a target, and we left a hint, and I needed an image. So I used a lot of AI to write the code for certain things, like all the Bluetooth elements. I'm not the strongest C++ programmer, so I had some help, but I got a lot stronger, and ironically, a lot of it was because AI led me down ridiculous paths that weren't there, so it forced me to read the documentation in some cases. So there's no shortcut for hard work sometimes, but the AI is helping you to a certain degree. But one of the things we wanted to do was provide a chance to explore encoding. And so I needed to write I needed an image, and we're trying to keep things thematic and everything. So generate me a picture that looks like X or Y. And even when I gave it, this is what I need the chart to say, it couldn't spell certain things.
Yeah.
Even when you spelled it for it, when it put it on the chart, it would have extra letters and stuff. And a human's going to see through that. So AI is going to write my next perfect pretext. I'm not believing that. But a human breaking into the mailbox can definitely figure out a compelling pretext and steal money from the company. So I'm not as worried about AI as an attack surface versus AI write me a test harness to go hit 50 clients.
Yeah.
And one of them's going to bite, and you just watch who enables and all the rest, so that, I'm sure they've got the equivalent of call centers. They're just waiting for the next person to lose a token, and they get in their mail and off they go. But the minute they're on, is like, great, give me the briefing of what this company is, and off they go. So I think it'll speed up the criminals' research, but I don't think it's going to write the code for them.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the latest podcast from Caffeinated Risk. Make sure you visit our website, caffeinatedrisk.com, to stay up to date on what we've been working on. Our website has bios of our podcast guests, posts about topics we're passionate about, and even a library of reference material we find valuable in the work we do every day. And don't forget to subscribe to Caffeinated Risk on your favorite podcast service. This way, you'll be notified when we release our next podcast, and you can listen to our previous guests just in case you missed them. Thanks so much for listening to Caffeinated Risk.